Hi guys, you've been Central here and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be ranking all of the Dalek stories from the new series. So this is from Rose, or more specifically from Dalek, all the way to Revolution of the Daleks. Note that I will not be including stories where the Daleks appear but aren't centre villains, such as Day of the Doctor, Pilot, and like the Pandora Opens Big Bang, stuff like those stories, because although the Daleks are in them, and for some of them the Daleks are arguably the prominent villain, I think that they kind of get put in the background, and as long as, because they're not the forefront of the story, I'm not counting them. But yeah, if you do seem to go on to enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does help me out. But yeah, coming in at last place is Asylum of the Daleks. This is Matt's second Dalek story that's appearing on this list, and it was awful, to say the least. I remember watching this when I was younger, and I think I've watched it once more since then, because I was doing one massive rerun of his era, and both times I think it just didn't work. The whole concept of this one is Matt goes to, the Daleks capture Matt, Doctor, Amy and Rory, and they need help because they can't destroy this planet, which is the Dalek Asylum, because they need, to, because the shield's inside it, but once the shield's down, the Daleks can destroy it, type thing. It's a bad concept, because I think it's not a bad concept, because it seems interesting. You think, well, if the Daleks who fear probably only the Doctor, realistically, the only thing the Daleks fear, if the Daleks fear something, then it must be quite important, which means that if they were to, if the only thing they would be able to counter attack with is something else they fear quite badly. But the whole story is a bit of a shamble. I think it introduces Clara as well, which, although she's called Oswin at this point, she's still not that great. I don't really like these multiple different Claras that we see in Series 7, so that's another down point. Also, everything with Amy and Rory forced in this one. Their whole "we got divorced" type thing was boring. It felt like they just needed a way to bring these characters back into it, but kind of slowly start to show their maturity in some respects, but it's still pretty shocking. Next, in 10th place, we have A Tennant Story, Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks. This is actually similar to, but a bit different from Asylum of the Daleks. This one is a really good concept. I think this concept's pretty smart, but it was executed pretty poorly in terms of writing and, the way it was filmed. The story basically goes with the concept of the Kulskaru on their last legs. They have not much left. It's, for all they know, which is pretty much the case, it's just them now left in the world, in the universe. They're the only Daleks left in existence, and so they try and find a way of evolving, and they go on and on and on underground, getting the pig slaves, trying to find intelligent people, turn them into part Dalek, part human hybrids. And then you get to about the end of the first part, and at this point Dalek Sec has started this mutation to find another form of the Daleks, and you're thinking, well, okay, we'll see where this goes. And at the end of the episode, or I think it's maybe at the start of part 2, you see Dalek Sec's final form as a humanoid, and it's awful. He is very clearly not comfortable wearing this outfit. I don't actually know the name of the actor, but whoever was playing him at the time clearly was very uncomfortable. David Tennant, while having a good performance in this story, I think also didn't really care that much. The one thing that does does make this story much better, but the one thing I will say about this one, which is good, is the fact that the Daleks are not in the series finale. I think this story was definitely one of those was the one where they went, we don't really want to have Daleks in it, but we kind of keep them. We have to make a Dalek story because contract contractually they had to make a Dalek story for every season, I believe up until about series 4 or 5 or something like that, when the contract wasn't in power anymore, so they didn't have to put them in. But you can tell this series was the one series where they were like, well, we don't really want the Daleks in here, so they just kind of stuck them in to this point here so that they can have the master reveal later on. But overall, it's just not a great story. Then in 9th place we have Victory of the Daleks, Matt's other story, because fortunately for Matt, I think he had a bit of a shocking run when it came to facing the Daleks in terms of head-on. This beginning of this, I think the big issue with this story was, it's clear that Mark Gatiss, who wrote this script, took heavy influence from Power of the Daleks, a Charlton story which is missing at the moment but has been animated, hence why it was on my classic Dalek ranking. And he's done it but slightly worse. He's tried to change it up a bit, so it's a bit different, and it's an interesting concept, the Daleks, working, but they're working for the British in World War II, but it was pretty poor. The first bit, for the first part, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. The Doctor's going to get annoyed that the Daleks are still alive, and then he's going to try and get them to show himself, and he does, and then we get the Paradigm Daleks, which was interesting. I remember them coming out of the progenitor room. I'm being quite surprised at these new cool kind of looking Daleks, because obviously I'd seen some of the classic stuff, so I knew the Daleks weren't just bronze and they had different colours and redesigns. Also, the army ones are obvious in redesigns, but then they never appeared again, and that was a big issue with the story. They didn't really appear again, but it didn't, it's not very good, and you just question, why did he? If he should have changed them, he could have changed them. Stephen Moffat should have changed the Daleks and then stuck to them and kept them coming back, rather than by Asylum the Daleks keeping the bronze design back again. So it never really made sense to me. But yeah, swiftly moving on from that, we have number 8, which is Revolution, the first New Year's special. It's okay. Ryan gets a lot to do in this story, which is odd, considering for series 11, a lot of it is focused more on other people, especially the Doctor and Yaz, and even Graham a little bit, but Ryan kind of gets the backbench, so it was odd to see the story where he kind of became more of a important character. The Dalek itself is quite interesting. It takes ideas from Dalek, in the sense that there's one Dalek that's trying to terrorise them, but I think although it's a good story, I think they tried to then later on, which is a better story, which I'll get to, Revolution, did what they tried to do in this and built on it, and it was kind of a lot better, so we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah, it's an okay story, but there are 2 stories, Dalek and Revolution of the Daleks, which are significantly better than the story, which they build off basically of the story. But then in 7th place we have the Magician's Apprentice and the Witch's Familiar. It's a decent Capaldi story. It's the start of Series 9. Series 9, which is, in my opinion, the worst series for Capaldi. I think Series 8, he has a cool tone. He's not really sure what manner he is. And we'll get to it in Into the Dalek in Series 8. I'll mention it a bit more. Series 10, I really love him in Series 10. It's my favourite series. So, yeah, I mean, that shows you how it must be quite good. Series 9 is, in my opinion, a dip in quality. He kind of becomes a bit more reckless. He doesn't really know. He knows what he's doing, but he doesn't really convey it all that well to the audience. And I think the biggest issue with this one is while the Doctor is with Davros in most of the story, by the end of the story, Davros says that he's tricked the Doctor, but then the Doctor says that he knew that Davros had tricked him. But that makes you question, does that mean that all the heartfelt things that you've been saying and all these things that you seem like you're actually talking like proper people, was this all lies, or do you actually mean this stuff, but you were just trying to lie to get your way to do whatever you were trying to do as your end goal type thing? And it questions you because the whole story was quite interesting. I mean, Davros congratulates the Doctor for bringing Gallifrey back and all that, and then you question, well, did Davros really mean that, or was he just, trying to get to the Doctor, so the Doctor will, you know, build into his master plan, basically. Clara and Missy. Well, Missy's pretty good in this story. I really like Missy in this. She's quite funny. Clara's just a bit annoying again. I'm not a fan of Clara in many of these stories, mainly because I find her trying to be like the Doctor, when if Moffat wanted someone like that, they could have brought Romana in, or somebody who we know is like a Time Lord, or even just a Time Lord, who you would say, well, yeah, they would be similar to the Doctor. But then, swiftly on after, we've got number 6, which is Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. Tennant's first Dalek story, which I mentioned in my Cyberman new series Cyberman 1, which I done, so should go check that out after this. But it's with Daleks in this, as I said in that review, and the Daleks get a lot more. So I'm not going much depth into this one because it's just pretty, you know, as is. But yeah, I mean, whatever type thing anyway. But moving on swiftly after this, we've got number 5, which is Revolution of the Daleks, which is the first one I've said after Resolution. And this is what I think should have happened originally. I know there's some tie-ins to Resolution and stuff like that, but this one definitely builds off the foundation that Resolution had. Resolution was like the groundwork, and it definitely built off on this. And it's a significantly better story. This is also the first time I'm not a fan of Chris Chibnall, and I will never be a fan of Chris Chibnall, but this is the one story where I'll give him props. I do like the companions leaving the TARDIS. It's not a callback in any respect, but I think in the classic series when Adric died and other companions died, because it was very unoften, it wasn't that often that they died, it hit harder. But now you seem to find that companions die, or get their mind wiped, or, you know, do whatever they're doing a lot more frequently. I mean, Clara died pretty much like 7 times. Rory died a lot as well. So I liked the fact that not Rory, Graham and Ryan just left. They just like going, and that was smart. Captain Jack in this, while I will get onto him a bit later in Stolen of Shuni's End, he was good in this one. He was decent in this one, though I thought he could have done more, and he didn't seem to actually attribute to the story that much, except from getting the Doctor out of jail. But I think that what Chris Chibnall was originally planning to do was possibly tease the idea of bringing Torchwood back, considering that he'd worked on that as well. But yeah, anyway, into number 4, we have Into the Dalek, which is Capaldi's Season 8 story, which I was going to mention. This is Capaldi in really good form. He is dark, but he's still trying to figure out what kind of a man he is. There's an amazing scene where the Doctor's trying to tell them to be careful because they might trigger an antibody, which is like trying to kill the humans inside the Dalek. At one point, the guy triggers the antibody, and the Doctor gives him something, and you expect that, you know, the Doctor's trying to save him, so he gives us this item or whatever, so, you know, so that the antibodies will not kill him or not kill anyone there. But instead, the antibodies just kill him, and then the Doctor says, well, it was just to prevent from them killing anybody else. And you think, that's pretty dark. Like, it's not Colin Baker era levels of dark, with hand crushing Cybermen and all that, but, you know, it was pretty, you know, dark. I mean, the idea that the Doctor just went, well, I mean, I don't really think I can save him, or rather than being sorry that he can't save him, he just goes, oh, well, I'm going to give him this, pretend that he's fine, and make him think he's okay, and then, you know, just murder him. Not murder him, but, like, you know, I'm going to let him die, you know, type thing. It's quite shocking. In terms of the Dalek itself, Rusty, yeah, it was pretty interesting. I did think it was smart how they wrapped him up again in Twice Upon a Time, although I thought that it was odd that they brought him back, since he hadn't got really many more mentions after this story. But still, yeah, he's pretty cool. He's a pretty cool Dalek, which you probably didn't think. I didn't think I would ever say that for a pretty cool Dalek. Yeah, I like the old idea that he saw this star and he realised that the Daleks are trying to destroy this beauty, which is similar to what Dalek Khan did, which I'll get onto in like a minute or two, hopefully. So yeah, quite interesting. But next we have Dalek, which is the other one which I said I'd build off of Resolution. As I said in Resolution, there's a single Dalek and he's one-man force trying to kill everyone. This is what Dalek does. In Dalek, it shows the true nature of the Doctor. I mean, Eccleston, well, I think performs better in Parting the Ways, which I'll get to. He's still on top form here. You can see the hate of this man after he's come out of the Time War, and I think it's so, so smart writing that they've decided the one thing that people, would feel would be this machine, and it's basically the Doctor's hate is this one machine. Everything the Doctor despises is that machine right there, to the point where at the end of the story, well, I'm going to admit I wasn't a fan of the ending as much in terms of him taking his own life because he became part human or something. It was a bit odd, but the idea that the Doctor arguably became worse than a Dalek at the end of the story, going as so far to point a gun at the Dalek rather than the Dalek wasn't even paying attention to him, was quite an interesting idea that they could have explored a little bit further. And did they really? Not particularly. But now we have Tennant's last Dalek story, Stolen Earth Journey's End, and now this is basically just Russell T Davies throwing everything he had ever done into the one episode. You've got Tennant's Doctor, you've got all the companions the Doctor travelled with, Donna, Rose, Martha, Captain Jack, Mickey, even Jackie's in this. Then you've got Sarah Jane Adventures making an appearance with Luke and Sarah Jane, Mr. Smith and K9, Torchwood with Gwen, Ianto Jones and Captain Jack. And you even get Davos finally coming back, which I can't remember it that well but I'm sure a lot of fans of the classic series would have been waiting for Davos to come back. Similar after the Master came back, you would be expecting Davros to be following sooner rather than later, and he did, and he came back quite well. I think this is probably his better out of the two stories in terms of Davros, not just the Dalek story, but Davros. I think the Dalek's idea is still pretty smart. The Meta-Crisis Doctor was actually an interesting idea. I thought what the Meta-Crisis Doctor did was wrong in terms of what the Doctor deems as right and wrong. But he wasn't wrong in the sense that the Daleks would have had a big enough power force to destroy the universe, even if it was slower than the reality bomb. So yeah, it was a good story. And yeah, everyone was pretty good in it. I think the only thing I would say, which is one thing I didn't like, is the fact that Rose came back, and I'm not a fan of Rose either, because I find a pain in the backside when it comes to Tennant's era, because you're trying to watch a good one and no wait, he's back. Tennant's crying about losing Rose. It annoys me. So yeah, but in number one we have Bad Wolf, Parting of the Ways. This embodies what a Dalek story is. The Dalek, did it good with one Dalek showing a brute force of that. You've got this whole fleet of Daleks, and they're coming in, and you're seeing them, people, level after level, murdering people, civilians, just whatever. They don't, apart from possibly the android, they don't really seem to take much damage. I think they lose all of 3 Daleks in the whole thing up until Rose comes in after she's absorbed the time vortex and the heart of the TARDIS. Until that point, they lost about 3 Daleks to the humans. And it shows how little resistance they had, considering, in the past, Daleks have died quite frequently, even in one's stories, such as Daleks' invasion of Earth, and, even stuff like genesis to the Daleks. I think they lose a couple. But in this, they lose about 3, and you think, wow, geez, they managed to keep all these alive. And even Eccleston at the end, generating was fantastic, to use his own word. I think it would have been nice to see Eccleston stay on, but obviously he decided to leave for his own reasons. But overall, the Daleks were great in the story. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and it will, as it would, help me out. But yeah, see you.